Picture this. You're a sailor in 1715. You've been at sea for 8 months. You sleep in a hammock below the waterline with 40 other men. You eat biscuits full of weevils. You get whipped if you disobey an officer, and if you die, your family gets nothing. Zero, not a single coin. Now imagine someone offers you a choice. Join us, they say. Elect your own captain. Vote on every major decision. Get a share of every prize we take. And if you lose an arm in battle, we pay you compensation. That offer wasn't coming from a government or a union or a political party. It was coming from pirates. And hundreds of men said yes. This is the story of the Golden Age of Piracy, a period between roughly 1690 and 1730, when thousands of men and some extraordinary women turned their backs on the brutal world of imperial shipping and built something no one expected, a society of their own, equal, democratic, and terrifying. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will never think about pirates the same way again. To understand the Golden Age of Piracy, you have to understand the world that produced it, and that world was ugly. The early 1700s were the age of European empire. Britain, Spain, France, Portugal, they were all carving up the globe, shipping enormous wealth from colonies back home. Sugar from the Caribbean, silver from South America, silk and spices from India. The Atlantic Ocean was the highway of this wealth, and the ships that sailed it were the arteries of the most powerful economic system the world had ever seen. But the men who sailed those ships, they were disposable. A merchant sailor in 1710 earned almost nothing, was worked to the bone, could be flogged on a captain's whim, and had no legal recourse whatsoever. If he died at sea, his family starved. If he got sick, he was put ashore. If the company decided to fire him, done. No rights, no vote, no voice. The Royal Navy was even worse. Sailors were often pressed into service, meaning they were literally kidnapped off the streets of English ports and forced to serve. The Navy called it impressment. The sailors called it slavery. At the height of the Golden Age of Piracy, there were an estimated 1,800 to 2,400 active pirates operating in the Atlantic and Caribbean alone. Then came 1713. The War of the Spanish Succession ended. Britain and its allies signed the Treaty of Utrecht, and suddenly tens of thousands of skilled, experienced sailors were unemployed. The empire didn't need them anymore. The privateers, government-licensed pirates who had been attacking enemy ships legally during the war, had their letters of marque revoked overnight. Their ships were taken, their pay stopped. These men knew how to sail, they knew how to fight, they knew how to navigate, and they had nothing left to lose. The Golden Age of Piracy was not born from greed. It was born from desperation and fury. In the Bahamas, on a small island called New Providence, something extraordinary was happening. A group of ex-privateers and unemployed sailors had established what historians now call the Republic of Pirates, an actual functioning community based in Nassau. By 1716, Nassau had become the most lawless, chaotic, and, depending on who you ask, the most free city in the Western Hemisphere. Up to 2,000 pirates operated out of its shallow harbor, which was too shallow for large warships to enter. The island had no effective government, no taxes, no courts, no magistrates. But it was not lawless in the way you would imagine, because the pirates had their own law. They called it the Articles of Agreement, and it was, in many ways, more egalitarian than any legal code in Europe at the time. Here is how pirate democracy actually worked. Before any voyage, the entire crew, officers and ordinary sailors alike, would gather and negotiate the articles. These were written contracts that every man signed before the ship left port. They spelled out exactly how plunder would be divided, what the rules of conduct were, and what punishments applied for violations. Captain Bartholomew Roberts, Black Bart, a quiet Welshman who never actually wanted to be a pirate, he was the second mate on a slave ship in 1719 when his vessel was captured by a pirate crew. He was given a choice: join us or go back. He joined. Within 6 weeks, he had been elected captain by the crew. Within 3 years, he had become the most successful pirate in the history of Atlantic piracy, capturing over 400 ships across the Caribbean, the Americas, and the West African coast. He wore a scarlet silk coat, a diamond necklace, and a feathered hat. He died in battle in 1722, still at the helm of his ship, and his crew was so grief-stricken they drank themselves unconscious before being captured. Then there was Samuel Black Sam Bellamy, called the Robin Hood of pirates by his contemporaries. He preached a philosophy that would sound radical even today. He told the crew of a merchant sailing vessel, "I am a free prince, and I have as much authority to make war on the whole world as he who has 100 sail of ships and an army of 100,000 men in the field. Those villains who can make a profit of the sea by a licensed way, they rob the poor under cover of law." He died in a storm off Cape Cod in 1717. He was 28 years old. His ship, the Whideye Galley, was discovered by underwater archaeologists in 1984. The artifacts recovered from the wreck are now in a museum in Provincetown, Massachusetts. And then there were Anne Bonny and Mary Read, 2 women who broke every rule of their era by disguising themselves as men and joining pirate crews. Anne Bonny was the lover of pirate captain Calico Jack Rackham. Mary Read served aboard his ship. When the ship was captured in 1720 by a British privateer, the story goes that most of the male crew were too drunk to fight. Anne Bonny and Mary Read fought alone on deck while the men hid below. When Calico Jack was condemned to death, Anne Bonny's last words to him were reportedly, "I am sorry to see you here, but if you had fought like a man, you need not be hanged like a dog." The Empire could not allow this to continue. A functioning pirate republic was not just an economic threat, it was an ideological one. If word spread that ordinary men could vote for their leaders, share wealth equally, and live outside the hierarchy of empire, that idea was contagious. In 1718, Britain sent Woodes Rogers to Nassau as the new royal governor with simple mandate: end the Republic of Pirates. He arrived with warships, soldiers, and an offer, a royal pardon to any pirate who surrendered. Some accepted. Some, like Blackbeard, accepted and immediately went back to piracy. Rogers hanged the ones who refused. He strung up 8 pirates in Nassau's public square in a single day. It was a message: the era was ending. Over the next decade, the British Navy systematically hunted down the remaining pirate captains. Blackbeard was killed in a brutal naval battle off North Carolina in 1718. He was shot 5 times and stabbed 20 times before he finally fell. Bartholomew Roberts was killed in 1722. Calico Jack was hanged in 1720. One by one, the great names of the Golden Age were extinguished. By 1730, the Republic of Pirates was gone. The shipping lanes were safe again for the merchants, the companies, and the empires, and tens of thousands of men were back in servitude with no vote and no share. Here is what historians have spent decades arguing about. Were the pirates heroes or criminals, visionaries or bandits, freedom fighters or just opportunists with better PR? The honest answer is all of the above. They were violent, they were brutal to many of their captives. They operated outside the law because they had decided the law existed to protect the powerful and exploit everyone else. They weren't perfect, but they built something remarkable. In a world of kings and companies and absolute hierarchy, a group of desperate, discarded men created a system where every voice counted, where injuries were compensated, where a captain answered to his crew, where the rules were written down and signed by everyone, including the men who would be punished by them. No American colony had universal male suffrage in 1715. No European nation had it either. The pirates did. The Golden Age of Piracy lasted barely 40 decades, but what it represents, the idea that ordinary people deserve a say in how they are governed, how wealth is distributed, and how power is exercised, that idea didn't die in 1730. It just went looking for a new ship. If you found this story as extraordinary as I did, share it, like it, subscribe to this channel, because history is full of stories this good, and most of them nobody tells you.